This is Channel 4, now the result of a 2-year investigation by a Dutch TV team into the other face of terror.
This Englishman is not on a holiday trip to see the Eiffel Tower, nor about to pay a visit to the Louvre Museum. He is on his way to see old and dangerous friends. We knew he'd come, and we were ready to follow him, all the way through his previously untold story. He's a political activist, an extreme right-wing agitator from the East Midlands, deeply involved in a violent European brotherhood of extremists, ideologists and gun runners. He's on his way to the Paris suburb of Clichy, to the apartment of a French-Vietnamese member of an outlawed National Socialist organization. He knows the place well. He stayed there before, and he knows it's been used as a terrorist hideout and armory. From a distance, we will listen to the conversation through a hidden microphone.
Yeah. Are you well?
Yeah.
Good. Why you leave England?
Troubles. Troubles.
Police.
Can you? Yeah. You don't know my brother. Min! Tu te présentes là.
Ray Hill. Hello. Nice to meet you. Is there anything happening?
Here, in France?
Yeah.
We have some troubles with communists, so no way.
You still got the M16?
Yeah, it's always possible to buy them, because it's legal in France. Look that, it's legal, hold on.
Beautiful.
That's the 44 Magnum. A Ruger, 44 Magnum.
How much?
2,000 francs.
Not much.
What do you see?
I saw rifles, which were, he described to me as 44 Magnums.
How many?
2 of them lying on the floor.
What else?
And he opened a cupboard and had what looked to me similar to the old Sten guns. Now, I recall Sten guns from my military service 20 years ago.
That's automatic weapons, you mean?
They're
semi-automatic.
Semi-automatic. They appeared to be so, but I'm no weapons expert. All I can really tell you with any degree of certainty is that there were guns, you know.
How many on total did you see?
Half a dozen, I'd say, 4 in the cupboard, 2 lying on the floor.
Are they for sale, these weapons?
Yes. I was offered a 44 Magnum for 2,000 francs, I think it was.
And the others? The other weapons?
His friends in the extreme right-wing movements in Europe possess guns, ammunition, explosives, and they use them to injure, maim, kill men, women and children for the sake of violence and in the pursuit of political goals. Creating terror and spreading propaganda of hatred are closely linked, sometimes even embodied in the same persons and organizations.
When it comes to mixing the population with Asians, with Africans...
The British National Party launches its 1983 anti-immigrant election manifesto. And next to party leader John Tyndall, ex-National Front chairman, we again meet our Paris visitor in his official role as parliamentary candidate.
My name's Raymond Hill. I'm generally known as Ray. I entered nationalism in the mid-1960s through the anti-immigration movement known as AIMS in Leicester, largely because of the flood of immigrants coming into the country at that time, and I just got married. Seemed extremely strange to me that people from the other side of the world were getting houses, accommodation, jobs in the UK. I was finding a great deal of difficulty getting any of them and setting up a home. And no explanation was ever given.
So gradually, Ray Hill becomes a campaigner against colored immigrants. His political message is simple and crude, and identical to that of his overseas right-wing comrades.
No further immigration. Stop it. We've got 4 million of our own people on the dole.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You agree with that?
Oh, yes.
Don't want to know who you're going to vote for? It's up to you. No more immigration.
2 millions de chômeurs, c'est 2 millions d'immigrés en trop. C'est vrai que nous établissons un lien direct entre la présence en France de plus de 6 millions d'immigrés vivant au crochet de la population française qui travaille.
In France, in Britain, immigrants as convenient scapegoats for the economic crisis, racism as almost respectable politics. In Holland, the slogans of Ray Hill and Le Pen have even achieved the election of the first extreme right-winger to parliament, Hans Janmaat. Their political arena and recruiting ground is the street, where they preach their brand of nationalism and patriotism. Their target, unemployed and disadvantaged white youth. Here, Ray Hill, star and leader in the British movement, excels. Provocative, verbally violent, always keeping his overt activism well within the law. But meeting in secret with his European counterparts, the varnish is stripped. This is the same Ray Hill, flag bearer of the League of St. George, Britain's elite Nazi club, during a clandestine international Nazi gathering at a British war cemetery in Belgium. These images were never meant to be seen by outsiders, for good reason, for here the comrades openly celebrate their Nazi ideology.
Les Français, certes, mais les Flamands, les Espagnols, les Américains, les Anglais, toutes les nations blanches de notre race qui a su construire la civilisation que nous connaissons, ont à combat une guerre totale à mener contre un ennemi impitoyable.
These men all play political double acts. On the outside, they preach pseudo-respectable right-wing politics. In reality, they are violent racists and above all anti-Semites.
La révolution nationaliste. Cette révolution qui verra une Europe unie, blanche, débarrassée de tous les parasites qui empoisonnent, c'est-à-dire les immigrés de couleur, les francs-maçons et les juifs. Cette Europe de demain, elle est déjà présente dans nos cœurs.
But I came to realize there was a common motivating factor, and it was hatred. Hatred directed at immigrants, at Jews, at whoever, at anyone who didn't agree with them. Anyone motivated by hatred must be dangerous. But of course, in the mid-1960s, they burnt something like 30-odd synagogues down. However, I thought that at that time it was a small section of wild men who'd gone over the top. It wasn't really, it was only the tip of an iceberg. And this, of course, is happening now on a far, far wider scale with the youngsters of today. Synagogues no longer being the favourite target, but Pakistani-owned shops, houses even. Very common. And boasted about.
Proud of it.
Yeah, proud of it.
But away from this world of hatred, violence and death, Ray Hill has been living another, more normal life, with those he's supposed to hate. In fact, for years he only played the role of a dedicated National Socialist and racist.
The idea of putting people back on a boat at bayonet point, not for me. Not for me.
If you
don't agree with these policies, or you came not to agree with them anymore, why didn't you just drop out of the movement?
Because it was a gradual progression is one reason, and the other reason is that when I realised the danger, the extent of the danger, the evil that was being perpetrated, the burning out of innocent people, petrol bombing of the houses, I stayed in and decided that I could do more to prevent that sort of thing from the inside than I could from the out.
Within the right-wing movement in Europe, what are you?
A sleeper, an agent.
As an agent, Ray Hill is going to sing along with these ex-SS members. He attends this international gathering in Belgium to report about it to the British anti-fascist magazine Searchlight. Amongst these European neo-Nazis, united in their nostalgia for Hitler, he discovers someone who is extremely careful not to be seen. A man at the very center of a worldwide network of propaganda and violence. A man whose car he identifies there. The Brighton-based printer and publisher Tony Hancock. Hancock publishes for all extreme right-wing organizations in Europe. His print shop produced, for example, the racist magazine Bulldog, whose editor was convicted for inciting racial hatred. Anti-Semitism is basic to most of his material, which whitewashes Nazism by denying the murder of 6 million Jews by the Hitler regime, and is produced in many languages. A former friend and collaborator of Hancock is the ex-chairman of the National Front and the National Party, John Kingsley Reid.
All the organisations on the right would have difficulty having their material printed and published if it wasn't for the existence of the Hancocks. There was a booklet printed by the Hancocks, which was written by Sandra Ross, which was a pseudonym for a member of the National Party. The Hoax of the 20th Century was a book which was published and printed by the Hancocks for sale abroad.
The Hoax of the 20th Century, what is it about?
The Hoax of the 20th Century is written by one Butts, an American, who claims to be a doctor, I don't know what of, and wrote a book which intends to show that the so-called genocide of the Jews and the Hitlerite regime's attitude towards Jews, the concentration camps, was not in fact true, and that this is a major hoax which has been exploited upon the people generally through the media and largely by Jewish design.
The Hancock operation is aimed at making Nazi ideology acceptable and respectable by denying its crimes. It is a hidden underground operation. But through Ray Hill, we trace the Hancock printing works to this industrial estate in Sussex. Hancock must know that what he produces offends and incites, for here he hides behind the facade of a plastics factory.
Sign down there on the ground.
The Hancock, the printers were in there, right?
Yeah.
And they're no longer here?
No, they're still there.
But they're not running every day?
No. They come in now and then.
How often about?
2-3 times a week.
And do the people here know what they print?
Got a vague idea, yeah.
What do you mean a vague
Put it
idea?
this way, I made him a bomb-proof letterbox.
A copy of The Hoax of the 20th Century and this booklet by Sandra Ross that I mentioned earlier were pulled together and sent to every MP in the British House of Commons.
And who financed that operation?
Well, I believe the money initially came from the Arabs. I don't know which Arabs, but it was actually distributed and parcelled and packaged by the National Party when I was chairman of the National Party. The intermediary was a man called Richard Lawson, who was a member of the National Party, and the books were supplied by the Hancocks. I believe the money actually came from an Arab source.
How much money was involved?
Well, it would be difficult to say today, but roughly about £2,000 to £3,000.
And the entire operation of printing the book and distributing, how much was involved?
That would be difficult to estimate unless one knew exactly how many copies of the book had been published. But I would say no less than about £6,000.
£6,000?
Yes.
How do you know all this about it? And what was your involvement in that book?
I personally actually designed the cover of the book, which, as you can see, is that one there.
You designed the cover?
I designed the cover, yeah.
Does it surprise you, Arab money, for this kind of literature?
No, it doesn't. The conflict has always existed historically between Jews and Arabs, it isn't surprising that Arabs would fund something which would discredit Jewish history or Jewish claims.
But politically it would embarrass them to be seen to support extreme right-wing literature or racist literature, wouldn't it?
They couldn't afford to be too overt about it, and quite obviously Arab money would not go to organisations such as the National Front or the National Party directly, because they are parties which are known for being anti-immigration, anti-coloured immigration, and many of the coloured people, the Pakistani element in particular, are Muslim. The Muslim Brotherhood is such that it would be very doubtful if the Arabs would want to be seen to support anything of that nature.
Hancock's propaganda operation extends into the continent and reaches beyond activism into the scene of terrorism. Paris, rendezvous with Ray Hill. Here he has undertaken several intelligence missions and has discovered the Hancock connection with a world of violence. Is there an international terrorist network?
Yes.
How do you know about that?
Well, I learned about it when I spent some time down in Brighton with the Hancock family.
Yeah, what happened then in Brighton?
I was invited down there and met Alex Ormove, who invited me to spend some time in France.
Who was Alex Ormove?
Alex Ormove was a member of FARN, the French National Socialist movement. And he invited me to spend some time in France with him. And I was asked to provide safe housing for Mark Frederickson, who was the leader of FARN and was under suspicion or investigation for some sort of criminal offences at the time.
Where did you go?
I stayed in a flat in Rue Maurice, Clichy, in Paris.
Which number?
Number 19.
Whose flat was it?
It belonged to Yan Tran Lon, a Vietnamese.
And who is he? What's his connection with this organization?
He's a member of FARN.
Regarde, 44 magnum. 444.
Yeah? Could you get them?
The Clichy flat, which Ray Hill has already discovered as a right-wing armory, also serves as a guest house for overseas comrades of the outlawed but still operational underground FARN organization. A safe house for wanted terrorists from all over Europe, especially Germany and Spain. In the summer of 1983, the French police discover the safe house, raid it, and arrest a Spanish fascist wanted by Interpol, who fled his country on the day he was to start serving 10 years in a Madrid jail. This is him, Lorenzo Martinez, member of Franco's Falange movement, found guilty of the brutal murder of 2 Spanish communists in a Madrid bar. The Spanish government asks for his extradition. The court of Versailles agrees.
Por falangista y por patriota español, y porque en España no hay democracia verdadera, solamente para los marxistas. ¡Arriba España!
Martinez sought refuge with his French comrades. Others, also operational in Spain, would move to Britain. Marbella, Christmas 1982. In one of the biggest robberies of this century, the safes of the Bank of Andalusia are spectacularly emptied overnight. Suspect number 1 is an Italian neo-Nazi and fugitive, then on the run from Italian anti-terrorist police, named Luciano Petroni. He will be arrested in London a year later and extradited by a British court. Petroni, suspected of numerous robberies and murdering 2 policemen in Italy, had lived in central London with his girlfriend, but had continued his political activity with other suspected right-wing Italian terrorists, their charge sheets even longer than Petroni's. Their extradition from Britain was refused as a result of administrative errors by the Italian authorities. This group of Italians had been sheltered in various safe houses in northwest and south London, helped by members of the British League of St. George. Now the Italians are involved in a political takeover bid of the National Front, but their initial British contact was made through Ray Hill.
I was in touch with a chap called Max Boller, who is now doing 15 years imprisonment in South Africa for causing explosions. And through him, I was contacted by an Enrico Maselli, who asked me to visit him in London. I did visit him and was asked could I provide safe housing for Italian fascists in the near future.
And when was this meeting?
In 1980. This was only a matter of weeks, a couple of months at the most, before Bologna. And when Bologna took place, of course, I put two and two together.
Meaning that the safe houses were for Italian?
Clearly for the Italians responsible for Bologna.
82 people perished in the biggest right-wing terror attack Europe has seen since the war. Were fascists frustrated knowing that democracy would not get them into power? Were they trying to provoke a right-wing political reaction through terror? Perhaps. Certainly, London served as a hiding place afterwards, and also as a base for planning further violence. The French neo-Nazi Jan Tranlong, whose Paris flat Ray Hill visited, stayed here in this West London bedsit for a year, studying English and engaging in less innocent activities. Our photographer was there when Tranlong met Ray Hill in London.
I received a telephone call asking me to meet him, which I did. He offered me weapons for sale.
Did you ask for weapons to sell?
No, he offered them to me. He gave me a price list. There's a photocopy of it in his handwriting.
What does it say?
Detonators.
10 quid.
Yeah.
Guns?
Guns.
400 quid.
400 quid. Submachines, 400 quid. And ammunition of various prices.
Tranlong gave you the original of this piece of paper in London?
He wrote it in my presence in the Winter Bar in King's Cross.
Once a year, they all get together, Europe's extreme right-wingers, young and old, in the Flemish town of Dixmude. For a whole weekend, the place is taken over by more than 40,000 so-called nationalists, demonstrating their loyalty to Flemish Germanic ideals to the tune of South African hymns. Among the foreign guests attending this dubious festival, Ray Hill, here to investigate the source of racist books and pamphlets flooding into Europe. He meets up with Hitler imitators from Germany, FAN members from France, and a selection of extremist Dutch and British youth at their first political meeting with their European brothers. The Belgian authorities are impotent in the face of this invasion, and, for example, allow open propaganda for the heroism of these ex-Waffen-SS volunteers. In this atmosphere, racist activists recharge their batteries with literature of the kind we've seen before, the denial of Nazi crimes, produced and distributed by the Hancock operation in England. Hill identifies the intellectual source of this rewriting of history as an American publication called the Journal of Historical Review, published by the Los Angeles-based Institute for Historical Review. The Institute also holds a totally secluded annual conference for invited guests only. Their invitation says that only screened participants may attend and will be met upon arrival at Los Angeles Airport to be taken to the secret conference site. So we wait for them at the airport. We follow at a distance, en route for the top-level gathering of so-called revisionist thinkers, which has never been filmed or photographed before. Down the Santa Ana Highway, exit Anaheim, a Los Angeles suburb and home of the world-famous Disneyland. Finally, the hotel where only accredited and security-screened participants of the conference are taken, the Grand Hotel. Our camera hidden, we will try to find a way in, but they've taken precautions.
You're part of the hotel?
Security.
In the hotel security? No, not the hotel security, outside security, private security.
Why do you think they need so much security for a meeting in a big hotel?
If you have any organization having a meeting, you always have people who try to get in who don't belong.
So if you want to go up, you're going to prevent us from going?
Yeah, oh, well, yes.
Are you going?
We have come a long way to see who is attending this 3-day conference, so we keep trying. If we do not succeed this first day, we may have to rely on inside informants.
You gotta stay outside. Oh, the conference room.
An American anti-racist organization has managed at the last moment to put their man inside. We meet up.
So what happened inside this meeting?
Well, there were about 125 people present, individuals from Germany, from France, from Mexico, and from Great Britain, all in attendance. There were some leaders of some neo-Nazi organizations in the United States, including a fellow named David Duke, who used to head one of the major Ku Klux Klan groups in this country, and a fellow named James Warner, who was a former American Nazi and has been a Klan leader, now heads his own group called the New Christian Crusade Church.
The Ku Klux Klan has its own historical and present-day record, which is well known. And yet its men are admitted to this supposedly scientific conference of historians. We are back at the Grand Hotel.
You have been at the meeting for 2 days, so was it interesting?
I think it might, the effect of the Holocaust might have an effect on young people today.
Like what?
You figure it out.
The next two we know, the anti-Jewish activist Roy Bullock from San Francisco and Dr. Robert Peel, well-known anti-Semitic writer for US and British publications.
Was it important for you? Was it interesting?
It was very interesting because the forces that engineered the Holocaust myth control the world.
Who are they?
And control world events.
Who are they?
You can catch the next act out.
You don't want to answer this question?
What question?
Who are these people who built this myth?
I don't think I want to answer it.
Why not?
It makes me nervous just standing here.
Hitler's gas chambers never existed. That is the theory promoted by the Frenchman Dr. Robert Faurisson, who regards himself as a left-wing historian. Yet, he's a main speaker here amongst neo-Nazis and Ku Klux Klan leaders. No wonder he tries to stop us filming.
Vous voulez filmer la salle?
Non, je suis pas d'accord.
He wants no one to know he is here in Los Angeles, but he doesn't notice the Californian palm trees outside.
Je ne comprends pas pourquoi vous nous avez empêchés de filmer dans la salle, alors que ça n'était pas vous qui organisiez la conférence, quand même.
Pas de réponse.
Pourquoi vous refusez de répondre?
Pas de réponse.
Pourquoi vous nous avez empêchés, donc, de filmer à l'intérieur? Je vais me répéter tant que vous ne répondrez pas.
Eh bien, alors, c'est terminé.
Vous ne voulez pas répondre aux questions?
C'est terminé. Je ne refuse de répondre à vos questions.
Et c'est vous qui vous occupez de la sécurité ici?
C'est terminé.
The intellectuals of the extreme right are even less willing to show their faces than their activist followers.
No, you have to stay outside the doors.
But our cameraman, Forcato also heads Liberty Lobby, a political lobby for right-wing America, which, through a front organization, contributes to campaign funds of its favorite congressional candidates. Not the kind of operation Cato would like to see linked to the theories developed here.
Are you an historian?
I am a student of history. I am not a member of the Institute, so I do not speak for the Institute. I speak solely on my own. I came to this because I quest for knowledge. I quest for the truth. I think all too long the peoples of the free world have been lied to, that history has been distorted, and it's about time that everyone became an involved citizen of the world.
We had historians from many other states, even many other countries, and we exchanged ideas. We know each other. We are coordinating our work, etc. That's our purpose.
Do you agree on the main issues?
Yes, absolutely.
The Holocaust is being used to get monetary gain for the government of Israel. Millions of dollars are being taken from the American people to support Israel, and part of that has to do with the Holocaust.
So that's the reason why you are concerned?
Yes, because I'm a taxpayer, and my money is going to support the state of Israel, which is built on a lie.
The whole Holocaust deal was exaggerated, out of proportions. It never happened. The 6 million Jews allegedly were killed. That never happened.
Only the perverse or the politically interested need to deny facts. All the more worrying to find here a well-known author whose books sell by the millions, David Irving, British historian, star speaker of the conference, and no stranger to Ray Hill.
It's my very great pleasure to present to you Mr. David Irving.
The right regards David Irving as being fair and impartial.
Did you ever have any meetings with David Irving?
Yes. Yes, he addressed a meeting that I arranged at the Central Hotel in Leicester.
You arranged that meeting?
Yes.
At one point you gave speeches with people like what is it called, the British National Party?
No, never had anything to do with them.
That's the name, right?
I never had anything to do with them. I don't know, I have nothing to do with any group or organization in England at all.
Nothing?
Nothing at all. So I know this is claimed. People, when they want to bring the demonstrators into the streets in England, and they issue leaflets saying Mr. Irving is an officer of the National Socialist Group or the British National Movement or the National British Party or whatever. I don't know these groups. I have nothing to do with them. I think they will get nowhere.
You don't have any personal link to any of these people?
None at all.
Did he know that you were a candidate at the time and a prominent member of the BNP?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, he knew.
Who was the audience he was talking to?
Mainly BNP members, ex-National Front members, general right-wing activists.
And did he know that?
Oh, yes.
After Leicester and Los Angeles, we find David Irving in Hamburg on one of his frequent speaking tours organized by the German People's Union, an organization which mainly tries to correct modern Germany's negative image of its Nazi past. But tonight the police are here, for Hamburg is not happy to have Irving in its midst. The meeting is banned by the courts.
Mr. Irving, why is this meeting cancelled?
It has been cancelled, I understand, because they have received a number of threatening telephone calls.
Darf Sie bitten, dieses Interview hier abschließen?
Wissen Sie, für solche Banditen vom Fernsehen bedanke ich mich.
What kind of audience came to your meeting?
In the olden days, 3 years ago, I would say they were the old members of the German armed forces and a lot of foreigners. But now I have noticed that a large number of young people come and listen to the speeches I have to make. And this I'm very glad about. I like speaking to students from universities particularly, and I don't mind how rowdy or how lively they get, because I think I can usually persuade them that what I say is right.
But in Hamburg, Irving's audience still consists of ex-soldiers, the backbone of the German People's Union.
Aber Sie haben sich ja nicht zu schämen darüber. Ich werde Ihnen sagen, David Irving ist ein Historiker, den Sie kaum irgendwo besser finden könnten, wie der ist, ne? Und der vertritt da für Deutschland eine Meinung, die wirklich in Ordnung ist.
The young are on the other side, demonstrating for Irving and his friends to go.
Ausländer bleiben, Nazis vertreiben unsere Stadt. Wir haben den Faschismus satt. Nazis raus aus unserer Stadt.
Aber ich sehe geschrieben an Ihrem Plakat, wir sind Nazis. Wie kann ich ein Nazi sein? Wir wissen, wo die tatsächlichen Feinde der Demokratie stecken. Und das seid ihr, das seid auch Ihre Auftraggeber.
The situation becomes tense. So instead, Irving leaves for a secret rendezvous with his friends in Hamburg. Tonight's events haven't shaken his self-confidence.
I think I do probably know more about the Third Reich than very many other historians, probably than any other historian of the Second World War period.
A lot of history needs to be rewritten, and I've been saying this for the last 20 or 30 years.
It is Irving's thesis about the Third Reich which makes him so popular with the extreme right wing.
Hitler may not have known about Auschwitz, to put it in simple terms. To put it the other way around, so far nobody has proved that Adolf Hitler did know about Auschwitz. Nobody has proved with wartime documents that Hitler knew that the Jews of France, of Holland, of Czechoslovakia were being liquidated, murdered systematically. He knew about the transportation, he didn't know about the murder.
Hitler is clean. Irving's theory is more sophisticated than a straightforward denial of the Holocaust, but the result is similar. Admirers of Hitler need not feel guilty today. An Englishman, a non-German, a respectable historian says so. Very good news for the German comrades waiting for Irving in this cafe, who apply the racist themes of the past to the present day. The mass circulation paper of their German People's Union promotes side by side Irving and his history books, Nazi heroes, and the political drive to keep Germany pure and get rid of its foreign guest workers, mainly Turks, the scapegoats of today's right-wing extremists. The very same theme of hatred we hear all over Europe. And a call picked up by the young. Berlin, the stadium of the 1936 Olympic Games. West Germany plays Turkey, November 1983. Thousands of riot police protect Turkish supporters from hundreds of young neo-Nazi thugs who've infiltrated the ranks of genuine German sports fans. Foreigners out of our city, Turks go home. These are their slogans. This city's Turkish population is the largest in West Germany, and today may well be grateful for the victory of the West German team over their own side. Without frustrated German fans, there's little chance for the specially mobilized neo-Nazi gangs to create real riots. Under heavy police guard, they are led away from the stadium. The underground exit in the Turkish quarter is sealed off. These are the same mainly unemployed youngsters the extreme right aims to recruit everywhere in Europe. Ard-Heinz Marx, one of their leaders in West Germany, deputy chairman of the band ANS, the Action Front of National Socialists. At weekly gatherings, he prepares his followers in the Frankfurt area for racial violence. Shortly after we met him, Marx was arrested and charged with violent crimes. He's in prison awaiting trial. But while still free and at home, he used to wear his beloved uniform.
Perhaps we have today here in Germany civil war. And
civil war?
It can be, yes. If we have more people without work here, more crime, and more asylums, and more foreigners, Turkish, then it can be that here in Germany are outbreaks.
And you want to be prepared for that?
Yes.
But you won't be fighting here in Germany, will you?
If I fight with the M16 or with the G3 or with the Stenmark 4.
You can get those guns?
Oh yes, it's no problem.
2 years ago, the German authorities discovered here in the countryside the biggest illegal arms cache in recent history. Thousands of guns, thousands of rounds of ammunition, grenades, poisonous chemicals, all supplied by sympathizers inside the West German army. The British end of the movement also has its supplies. These arms were found by police in Birmingham. And none of this is stockpiled for fun. They are used to kill, as in the case of this black American soldier in Germany. The right-wing threat is taken seriously today, unlike a few years ago when terrorism in Germany was considered to come only from the extreme left. On the day of the football match, 6,000 policemen seal off the city of Berlin and search all arriving cars for arms. Fear reigns in the Turkish quarter, which looks like a fortress. The graffiti reads "Turks out" and is taken seriously. Some of the most violent neo-Nazis are no longer anonymous. They appear all over West Germany on wanted posters, like this one, Ottfried Hepp, dangerous armed terrorist. Frankfurt, an American army base, prime target for Hepp and the neo-Nazi terror gang he belonged to. America to them is black and Jewish and occupies their country. reason enough to conduct a terror campaign against it. In the course of 18 months, 60 US installations in West Germany were attacked, badly injuring numerous American servicemen. German police say the gang consisted of 6 men. 3 of them were arrested in hideouts in West Germany, 2 in England. Hepp, also hiding in England, escaped arrest. The man who provided safe housing for the 3 German terrorists in England is an old acquaintance of Ray Hill. We find him at the secret Nazi meeting in Belgium we saw earlier. His name, Major Ian Sutter Clarence.
Major Sutter Clarence is a former SAS officer who is generally thought on the right wing to be the military commander of Column 88.
Column 88 is?
Column 88 is a secret National Socialist organisation in England.
How do you know it is? What do you say it is, Column 88?
Well, I should know.
What's that?
That's a membership card for Column 88, that's me.
At the Belgian get-together, Ray Hill, as a member of the same delegation, was able to observe the British ex-major.
In the future, when Europe is threatened, then we, in our turn, will defend our common soil.
So Hill is well placed to pay the Major a visit at his home in Dorset, to inquire about the state of safe housing in Britain today and the whereabouts of the fugitive German extremist Hepp. Our camera hidden nearby, we filmed the meeting, which Hill would report on immediately after.
So can you tell me the exact conversation?
Yes, I walked up to him, he was sitting in his car, and I said to him, Major Sutter Clarence. He said, that's right. I said, can I have a word? And he said, Ray Hill, did you say? So I said, yes. I was with you in Belgium in 1981. He said, oh, yes, I remember. So he got out of his car, and I said to him, I just want to ask you one question. So far as safe housing goes, he said, well, there isn't really any safe housing in Britain these days. Things are very hot. Everyone on the extreme right who may provide such a service is under surveillance.
And then what did he say?
I nearly got done for harbouring the Germans that I had here, but they didn't have the evidence to sustain the charge. So I said to him, yes, they made enough fuss about it, didn't they? But they haven't got Hepp. And he said, they won't get Hepp. Hepp's too clever for that. I said, I heard he's in Belgium. He said, never. Possibly Spain. If not Spain, then he'll be behind the Iron Curtain now.
Arndt Heinz Marx, the youth agitator, with his party leader Michael Kühnen. These men have long been suspected of a close association with the fugitive terrorist Otfried Hepp. Their ANS neo-Nazi organization has wide European contacts. We saw this man at the Dixmuiden Nazi gathering in Belgium. After 4 years in prison for open Nazi activity, Kühnen has united the separate German neo-Nazi groups into one organization with over 2,000 members. Film of their first meeting, in which they were already fighting the police, is proof of their terrorist link. This man, chair in hand, is Otfried Hepp, follower of Arndt Heinz Marx, who has some even more surprising information on their relationship.
I know him. I was together with Otfried Hepp 1 year together in Lebanon.
What did you do in Lebanon?
In Lebanon, I have had a normal guerrilla warfare training.
By whom?
By the Al-Fatah. I was a member of the Al-Fatah. I was Fedayeen in Lebanon.
For how long?
Please?
For how long?
For 1 year.
And how did you come to get in touch with Al-Fatah?
The connections was about Hoffman. I was an officer in the Hoffman group, and Hoffman gets these connections with the PLO, and then we are a group of 15 men, and we go to Lebanon then in July 1980, and I come back in June 1981.
The Hoffman Group was a paramilitary organization training with real equipment on an estate near Nuremberg. It was only banned after 4 years of undisguised activity, and its leader, Karl-Heinz Hoffmann, currently facing murder charges, then decided to form a real guerrilla fighting force. With 15 of his best men, he found hospitality in Lebanon with Al-Fatah, hitherto only known for its cooperation with left-wing extremists.
I have given this CAF title here to every comrade who was with me together in Lebanon and is today an activist in the national scene.
And you're not afraid to pronounce, to be known to have been in Lebanon and to have this contact with the Fatah?
No, everybody can know it.
You're proud of it?
I'm proud of it, yes.
Why?
The Fatah, Al-Fatah and the PLO is fighting for the rights of their people. And we, as a representative of the German people, do the same. We fight for our people, and the Palestinians and we have one enemy.
Which is?
The international Zionism.
The Jews?
Yes.
For a year, the German neo-Nazis trained shoulder to shoulder with Palestinian guerrillas, not in preparation to fight Israel in the Middle East, but to be ready for action in Europe.
I was teach on the Kalashnikov AK-47, on the anti-tank launcher RPG 7, and on the light Soviet machine gun.
Some of the Germans would go on to bomb US army bases in West Germany using plastic explosives.
Our teacher has told us in 3 lessons, together 3 hours, something about plastic explosives. That was all, but this was only a theoretical lesson, no practice. We have only a practical lesson on hand grenades.
And did you forget the theoretical lesson?
Yes.
You don't know anything about it anymore?
No.
So it wasn't a very good lesson?
The news of Al-Fatah training neo-Nazis could severely damage its image in Europe. So when it broke, PLO spokesman Mahmoud Labadi called a press conference in Beirut to show these 2 German right-wingers, who, with Italian fascists, were trained by the PLO's enemies in Lebanon, the Christian Phalangists. As we have found out, neo-Nazis have always had operational, financial and ideological Middle Eastern connections. Connections we rediscovered here, opposite Disneyland, in the Los Angeles Grand Hotel, where the intellectuals of the movement meet in seclusion. The Institute for Historical Review also has friends and backers in the Middle East. Its co-founder, Lewis Brandon, pseudonym for the Briton David McCalden, developed its interest in Palestinian affairs. McCalden was recently kicked out of the Institute, so now he is ready to spill some of the beans.
About 3 years ago, when I was still the director of the IHR, I did write to a couple of Palestinian organizations in New York, and one of them very kindly agreed to come and speak at the 1981 Revisionist Convention.
Here?
It was in Los Angeles, near the Los Angeles airport at the Hacienda Hotel. Unfortunately, after the agreement was signed, I was purged from the IHR and banned from the meetings, so consequently I never got to meet this person. His name was Issa Nakli, and he runs he runs a Palestine Information Office in New York. His office is financed by the Saudi Arabian government.
Issa Nakli frequently contributes to the Institute's journal, but he refused to tell us why. So we inquired further about this political lobbyist who is not connected to the PLO with the special investigator of an American anti-racist organization.
Issa Nakli has access to Saudi wealth and Saudi influence, plus connections partly through the Saudis with the Muslim world. For example, he has a relationship with the World Muslim Congress, which is a worldwide Muslim organization which engages in Holocaust revisionist propaganda. For example, this past year, the World Muslim Congress mailed from its headquarters in Karachi, Pakistan, these booklets You'll notice one is the 6 Million Reconsidered, which is straight Holocaust revisionism, and anti-Zion, which despite its name is actually anti-Semitic. They mailed these booklets to every single member of the United States Senate and every member of, and incidentally we have here some of the envelopes to senators that received this. This was sent to Senator Gary Hart of Colorado, who, by the way, is now a candidate for President of the United States. And Senator Hart was kind enough to send it on to us. These booklets were also sent to every member of the House of Parliament in Britain.
The propaganda effort is obviously well organized, but who pays for it all remains a well-kept secret. So we investigated the case of the book Anti-Zion and his writer William Grimstead. This is the only photograph that exists of the man. From the files of the Anti-Defamation League, the Jewish anti-racist organization in America, it was discovered that Grimstead had been paid for his efforts by a foreign power. According to US law, US citizens receiving funds from abroad have to register with the Department of Justice as foreign agents. And William Grimstead had done so. The registration statement names the foreign principal for whom Grimstead is agent, Saudi Arabia. Payment arranged through the capital, Riyadh. Employment ran from June 1977. First payment, $5,000. As to the book Anti-Zion, Grimstead states he was paid through the Saudi embassy in Washington for what is called a humanitarian and educational project, namely writing and distributing the book, the sum of $20,000 US. Signed by the recipient himself, William Grimstead. Thus, the Los Angeles Institute unites different worlds. Outright racism, represented by people like Klan leader James Warner, here taking a walk in the hotel garden, and Nazism, combined with certain Middle Eastern interests, as in the case of another secretly filmed American participant to the conference, Keith Thompson.
Jews, filthy little psychotic Jewish stooge non-entities. Ladies and gentlemen, my very special friend, Keith Thompson. Thompson acted as a political agent and a special collaborator for such figures as the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. In 1952, Thompson registered as the sole American agent of the Socialist Reichspartei of West Germany, and with one of the leading figures was the great German patriot Major General Otto Ernst Römer.
Thompson is linked to the German ex-general Römer, and Römer is still active in Europe today. Ray Hill investigates the nature of this activity, and for that purpose he has arranged a discreet rendezvous in Paris with his old friend Mark Fredrickson, leader of the banned National Socialist FAN movement. We will listen in on the conversation and hear what Fredrickson knows about Römer.
Security of General Römer. He comes back from Egypt, and now he wished to constitute a party in Germany. Very interesting. He was in France last week, and I met him.
Helped by Ray Hill, we found General Römer at his home near Munich, still going strong.
War natürlich auch Goebbels einmal Gast bei mir. Goebbels war ja Reichsverteidigungskommissar von Berlin und ich kannte ihn gut.
Römer, highly decorated by Hitler for saving his life during the July 1944 assassination attempt, is now regarded as a respectable political thinker by the extreme right. In this pamphlet, he promotes the idea of a German-Russian alliance against Britain and, above all, America.
Was ich hier meine, ist das gespannte Verhältnis zu den Machthabern Amerikas. Und zweifelsohne spielt dort der zionistische Einfluss in der Wall Street eine entscheidende Rolle. Und ich sehe von dort her das Unglück kommen, weil Israel laufend Kriegspolitik treibt und der verlängerte Arm der Wall Street ist. Und weil auch durch die Unruhen, die im Mittleren Osten, in dem ich über 10 Jahre gelebt habe, mit ein Kriegsherd sein können für kommende Ereignisse.
Wo waren Sie im Nahosten?
Ich war in den letzten 5 Jahren in Damaskus. Ich war vorher in Ägypten.
Haben Sie damals auch politisch gearbeitet?
Ich habe damals politisch Herrn Nasser beraten, während der Zeit.
In those years, Raymer was suspected by the German authorities of working for the Nazi-run Orient Trading Company in Cairo, which illegally supplied East European arms to the Algerian FLN for their war against the French.
Mir wurde gezeigt, dass damals in den 60er Jahren, 50er Jahren, Sie, wenn Sie in Ägypten waren und in Syrien, mit der Orient Trading Company sich beschäftigen, dem mit der FLN arbeitet. Ist das richtig?
Mir sind diese Dinge durchaus bekannt. Aber das ist alles Vergangenheit, hat jetzt mit dem, was wir vorhaben, nichts zu tun.
And like his neo-Nazi followers of today, this highly decorated Nazi arms dealer has continued his fight against the Jews through active support of the PLO.
Ich kenne auch Herrn Arafat, natürlich, ja.
Und unterstützen Sie seine Bewegung?
Nein, das konnte ich gar nicht, denn wenn einer sagt, also ein Arafat braucht Waffen, ja, und man will also mich mit solche, denn der Arafat kriegt alles von Russland, was er haben will, und irgendwelche deutschen Waffenhändler brauchen sich nicht einbilden, da ins Geschäft zu kommen.
Raymer admits being an arms dealer, but there's more. The PLO connection works both ways, as Ray Hill finds out from the French neo-Nazi Fredrickson. For Raymer's political campaign amongst Europe's right-wing extremists is in turn financially backed by his friends in the Middle East. (1969) Zurich Airport. 4 Palestinian commandos attack an arriving aircraft of the Israeli company El Al, the first of what is to become a long list of attacks all over Europe. One of the Palestinians is killed by an Israeli security man on the plane. The 3 others arrested and subsequently tried by a Swiss court. The Palestinian defendants refuse to answer any questions. They see their act as political, not criminal. And here we are yet again confronted with the surprising collusion between enemies of Israel and hardcore Nazis. The defense of the Palestinians is handled by a Swiss lawyer, a Tunisian lawyer, and this French lawyer, Jacques Vergès, formerly defender of FLN members in France. But in the background, the defense is paid for by this man, a mysterious Swiss banker named François Genoux, a self-confessed admirer of Hitler, publisher of Nazi documents, and acquaintance of the right-wing British historian David Irving.
Genoux is authentic. François Genoux in Lausanne, he has all the letters that Martin Bormann wrote to his wife, for example. François Genoux in Lausanne has the political testament of Hitler. François Genoux in Lausanne has the table conversations of Hitler in the original form, which are the best. They are written in the first person. He did this by a series of very clever financial contracts in 1945 and 1946 with top-ranking Nazis.
Genoux published the political testament of Hitler in cooperation with a former SS captain, Hans Rechenberg, who ran a German-registered Middle Eastern company, the Arabo Africa. Like General Raymer's company, it also supplied arms to the Algerian FLN. In the same period, François Genoux helped set up the Arab Commercial Bank in Switzerland, with 40 million Swiss francs of the FLN's money. From publishing Nazi documents, Genoux had moved firmly into Middle Eastern business, which he was to continue with the PLO.
François Genoux is committed very deeply to the Palestinian cause, I believe. I think he had a daughter who was in the Lebanon 3 or 4 years ago, Martine, and she lost her husband in the interracial strife that began at that time even. The husband was machine-gunned in some attack or other. So he's personally committed both in a financial sense and also in other senses.
Like what?
I think he makes a business out of his deals with Palestinians. I think also that he has a political commitment. He regards himself as being a torchbearer.
Off camera, David Irving told us that Genoux sells arms to Palestinians. The Genoux connection continues in 1982 in Paris, when the police arrest 2 suspected terrorists in a car packed with explosives. The 2 suspects are Magdalena Kopp, a German woman, and Bruno Breguet, a Swiss citizen. The 2 are found carrying a plan indicating their suspected bomb target, a busy cafe opposite the Paris town hall. Breguet had previously been sentenced to 15 years imprisonment in Israel for terrorist activities, and only released after a public campaign supported by François Genoux. In Paris in 1982, the defense of Breguet and Kopp, said to be friends of the mysterious terrorist leader Carlos, was paid for by François Genoux and conducted by Genoux's French lawyer, once again Jacques Vergès.
Je suis là pour défendre 2 inculpés pour qui je ne cache pas que j'éprouve de la sympathie et de l'estime, et un point c'est tout.
Bruno Breguet has worked with Palestinian commando organizations, yet he is aided by François Genoux, the Nazi sympathizer. How do the 2 go together? David Irving provides an answer.
There are a lot of normal people who are also between old Nazis and pro-Palestinian people. You've got to remember there were something like 40 million Nazis at the height of the Adolf Hitler movement. People who voted yes for Adolf Hitler in 1938, for example, and there's a lot of Palestinians. So there's going to be a lot of normal people between those two fronts.
Yeah,
you mustn't assume that everyone who's there is therefore a gangster.
German, for instance, and he had been more active, like he had been supporting the defense of some terrorists.
Well, I will repeat the phrase I used before. I think he is a torchbearer of many causes. One of them is the cause of the Palestinians, whom he regards as an oppressed, a brutally oppressed race. Another one is he's a torchbearer of the cause of what he regards as the truth about the Third Reich, and he undoubtedly views the truth from a position which is somewhere to the right of my own position. He's a torchbearer of those several causes. He's a man whom I find personally very agreeable. More I won't say for fear of bringing yourself and myself into litigation.
The circle is closed in early 1983, when the former Gestapo chief of Lyon, better known as the Butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie, is extradited from Bolivia, where he has lived undisturbed for many years and brought to France for trial. Barbie's trial will be extremely controversial and political. That has been made abundantly clear by his ardent defender, the lawyer Jacques Vergès. But who pays Vergès? Is it again François Genoux, a Nazi helping a Nazi? The mysterious Genoux neither confirms nor denies it. Paris, June 1983. What is certain is that people like Genoux, like Raymer, like Hancock, are closely linked to people with arms and bombs, be they from the extreme right or the extreme left, and that people who propagate violent ideas can create real violence. Ray Hill witnessed this here in Paris in 1981.
We went to a party to celebrate Hitler's birthday.
Who were actually at the party?
At the party, a gentleman, that's the right word, who was introduced to me as Monsieur Petit. I understand that he was a high official in the Vichy French government, and that he served some time, a period of imprisonment after the war. He was there. Mark Frederickson was there. Tranmon was there. Ormove was there. Altogether about 30 people. And I was asked to contact people in England who may be interested in staging an English Munich or an English Bologna at the Notting Hill Carnival, Western Hill Carnival.
Who asked you that?
People at the party.
So not British people?
Not British people, French people.
France, Italy, Germany have all seen right-wing terror. Britain has so far been spared Nazi violence on this scale, but not because it was never planned. In Paris, Ray Hill's Nazi friends were preparing just such a bloodbath for London.
die Absperrung.
And what exactly did they ask you, and what kind of information did they provide you?
They told me that they could provide either the complete kit, suitcase job.
What does a complete kit consist of?
Explosives, detonators, timing device, the complete issue. Or any sundry parts of it that we may need on the assumption that the British end could provide some of it for themselves, you see.
And this, what was the purpose of this bombing? I mean, what was it? What was supposed to be bombed?
To cause an explosion at the Notting Hill camp.
Killing and injuring participants at Britain's most important public West Indian event would surely create the kind of racial tension neo-Nazis everywhere thrive on.
It was time that something like Bologna, like Munich, happened in England.
What was the connection between what they proposed in Notting Hill and Munich and Bologna?
The bomb was identical to Bologna.
The bomb they proposed to you?
The bomb that they proposed was identical to Bologna. The method was identical to Munich.
Can you be more specific?
About Munich, yes. The person planting the bomb had to go up with the bomb. The idea of that was to make detection more difficult. And therefore no one of any great value to the fascist or National Socialist movement had to be used to plant the bomb.
So they actually knew how the Munich bomb was done?
Yes.
And they said that the Munich bomb was done
in that way.
On purpose on that way?
Yeah.
So the German who went up in Munich was meant to go up?
That's right.
And how did you react to this?
How did I react personally to it?
No, how did you react at the meeting? I mean...
Oh, well, so far as they were concerned, I reacted with guarded enthusiasm and promised to convey their thoughts to the person whom they asked me to convey them to.
Who was?
A man called Malsky. Tony Malsky. He's the leader of a group called the National Socialist Action Party in Britain at this time.
So how's things? How's life?
All right.
Tell you what.
Our party's going fucking well. We're up to just over 1,000 members now.
Not bad.
That's a fucking year. I tell you, it's
bad.
fucking good. We're having our first meeting in London probably in the next 4 months. It's going to be a private meeting, all wearing uniform. But everyone's issuing
Right, now you passed this message on to Malsky.
Yep.
What did Malsky do?
Well, he told me that he didn't need explosives, but he couldn't handle detonators in England. And he made a visit to Paris to collect them. When I knew he was going to collect them, this was conveyed to the proper authorities.
In Britain?
Yeah. And then national newspaper, the Daily Mirror, blew the whole thing with a front page headline.
How did they get the information?
It was conveyed to them indirectly from myself.
Why was that?
Well, it had to be stopped, didn't it?
How you know that's what stopped it?
Well, I spoke to him shortly after the story broke to Malsky.
I said, we know where you're going. I said, you're going to go and give some votes in Paris. He said, there were tick-tocks in front your description, your name. He says, you've been ticked off, you don't have I said, get out. I said, don't get back in.
The only people who knew that I was going over to see him was Alex Formo, yeah. Now that him, yeah, and me knew it.
Absolutely livid. Obviously couldn't go ahead. And that was it. The thing was aborted. Thank goodness.
How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Redemption songs.
Are you going to continue?
No.
What are you going to do then?
What am I going to do politically? Nothing. Nothing. I think I've done as much as I can do.
Why are you talking to us?
To try, I think, to prevent kids being dragged into this sort of thing as I was, for their own good and for the good of society. And if my story stops just one or two from being drawn into this sort of web, well, it'll have been worthwhile.
How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Yes, some say it's just a part of
Are there others who are going to continue your work?
I'm not going to tell you.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, all I ever had, redemption songs, these songs of freedom, songs of freedom.